Hello, I'm Lori at the Bee's Knees, and I am living the dream and playing with clay. I would like to show you today this beautiful jewelry stand. It's two parts. I've made it a couple times for gifts and people love it. It's simple and I'm ready to show you how to do it. Come on along. So here we are, and we are going to start with just a slab of clay. The clay, as we've talked about many times in some other videos, we have this handy 3-tongue depressors that are taped together. That's our thickness. That's our measuring tool. And you can see it is too tall right now. It's too thick. And it will also be too small for our pattern. We do have a pattern for the top of this jewelry stand. So it needs to be a little bit bigger. We're going to take our roller and roll it out. Notice that I'm starting in the middle and rolling out. Starting in the middle and rolling down. It's important to do to make your clay even. I'm not going over the edges. Just have a little bit more to go. I'm take my measuring tool and put it right next to it. It's pretty close. There's another thing you can do to measure your thickness, and that is to take your tool that has the needle on the end and put it in there. Just take your fingernail and mark where it is. So this one is this deep, and then find another area and do the same thing. Mine's the same thickness, so I'm good to go. Just going to cover up those holes now and continue on. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is the texture pad. And the texture pad can be, anything you have around the house even. I love the silicone pads that I use, and you can see this one's pretty large. It has a beautiful weave on it. It's my favorite, so I like to use that. But you can even just find a package of doilies at home. You can see the doilies. There's different sizes in this packet. You can just search for these and find these online or in your party store. All different sizes of doilies in there. I'm going to use the texture pad. It's just my favorite. It makes a nice deep texture. Just going to roll it right on to the clay. Give it a few rolls. And then just start picking it up and taking a look. That's perfect. So right now I have this beautiful pattern on my clay. You can see it. And the next step is for me to take this pattern and lay it right on the top. Now, if you're using the doily or a circular texture, you can decide where you want to put it. Okay, check out your pattern and decide where you want to put it. I'm just going to put mine right in the center because it's a random pattern. And then I'm going to take my needle tool and hold down my pattern and just cut around. And then just take your needle tool and go out to the edge of your clay, lift it up, and remove the extra. On this pattern, I have a hole right in the center marked, so I'm just going to mark that. That's just going to help me center it later on. So I'm picking that up. Not going to use that anymore. But I am going to take some water and a sponge, and I'm going to just clean up that edge a little bit. Just a real quick cleanup. We'll do a little more cleaning later on. Then in our kits, there's a straw. And I'm going to make holes around the edge to put your earrings. So what I like to do is put one on each end. Just put the straw right through it. And then one right in the middle. And you're going to do that all the way around your piece. Okay, so that's to put in the holes for the earrings. If you don't want to put the holes in, that's cool. I've had a lot of people not do it. But you can also make a candy dish out of it if you don't put the holes around the outside. So just food for thought. Okay, so now we're going to take this piece and we're going to take a wood form. And the wood form is going to go right underneath this piece. Now, in order to get the design on the top, we're going to flip our piece over so the design is on the bottom. Remember that little hole that I put in there? It will help me line up the center of the dish. So I'm just gently pressing and looking to see, eyeballing it to see if it fits in the center. Another thing you can do, gently pressing down around the mold to make sure all your little scallops are about the same distance. Mine is not. So I'm going to lift it up, which you can do. Lift it up and just move it over a little bit and adjust it so that your petals are of equal distance all the way around. There, that's better. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just gently pressing it up against that wood mold, just like we have for other videos that we've had and we made the small dish. It's the same thing. I'm going to gently press it around, and then I'm going to take my tongue depressor, the single one, and I'm going to compress it just a little bit. And I'm taking it and I'm putting it at an angle and then pulling it across the clay. It's smoothing out my clay, and it's also compressing the molecules in the clay a little bit just to make it sturdier. You can take the edge and take it around the bottom of your mold just to press it against that wooden mold. Now I'm going to take my sponge with a little bit of water, wringing it out, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit more. Just gently pressing and smoothing. Get your edges. Now when I did that, I actually, what happens is you smear over your holes for your earrings. Just go ahead and take your straw again and just go through the opposite direction now through those and clean them up a little bit. Just get them all. Good, just like that. Now we're done with the top and we are just going to move this out of our way. So I'm going to take this and just put it at the top of my workspace, and it's going to dry as I'm working on the base. Okay, so we have taken the top of our jewelry stand and put it aside. It's going to be drying for a while we work on the bottom half. In the kit that we put together, if you choose to use, there are 2 slabs of clay, which is why I'm doing it in 2 sections right now. We are going to take the paper cup and the paper towel, just leave the paper towel as it is and wrap it around the cup. We're doing this because we want to create that barrier between the cup and the clay so it's easy to take off. Just going to tape that right on. And there we go. Set that aside. It's ready for later. Just wrap nicely. We're going to set it aside. Now we're going to do the same routine that we did with the other slab. We're going to roll it out so that it fits our next pattern, which is just a rectangular shape. Just measuring to see how far we've come. Looks good. Let's even it up. I'm going to compress this one a little bit just because I see some dents and a couple of spots that I'm not particularly fond of. So we're going to compress it and align the molecules. Just taking that stick again at an angle. There we go. I'm going to clean it up a bit. This is the size we want, so it looks good. We're taking our texture mat. And because this is a random texture, it doesn't matter how I lay it on there. And I'm just going to roll it out. Take a peek. Looks pretty good. And then we're going to take that rectangular pattern that I talked about, place it down on our piece, and just cut around the outside. Go right to the edge so you can open it up and take off the excess. Put our pattern aside, and this is very important that you have this at least 3 tongue depressors thick, because this is going to be the support for your dish. So don't chintz on this part. We're going to take this piece of clay and wrap it around our cup. Now when I'm wrapping it around, I'm wrapping it on top of that ledge of the cup. See this rim right here? I'm wrapping it around the edge of that, and I'm keeping it right on that. That will help me make sure it's level. So I'm using that lip. That little rim will help you line everything up. And I'm overlapping it. Now, some people like to do a clean seam on these. I like to add the extra support. The extra support will hold my dish up beautifully. So I'm going to overlap them like this. Let's make sure I'm lined up on the bottom of that lip. Come across, because I want to be even on the top also. I'm just going to kind of put it upside down and press it so it's nice and flat and even. Just like that. Okay. Now, to keep this seam together, I'm going to do some scoring. Scoring is the scratching of the clay. It's going to be pretty thick here, and that's okay, because I want it to be strong. And then scratch it on the other side. And put your water. See how I'm making this slip? And then I'm pressing it together. Now, I take it another step further, and I'm actually going to take the end of my brush and poke holes in it. Just right through it, just to kind of make sure that it's really stuck through there. It's going right through all that scoring that we did. Just cleaning it up a little bit with my fingers. And there's my base. You can take your sponge and clean it up a little bit if you like. And notice how gently I was holding everything. I wasn't squeezing it. I was being very gentle as I moved the clay around because I don't want to ruin my texture. I'm doing the same thing now. I'm just gently holding it and cleaning up areas. Okay, just like that. Now, at this point, we can kind of clean up our area and let these sit, both these pieces sit for just a little while. I would say up to a half an hour, and then come back and we'll put them together. The pieces have been drying for a little while, half hour, could be longer. What we're waiting for is some of the water to come out of the clay, and you'll be able to touch it and feel it. It's not leather hard yet, but it is stiffer, and it will be able to hold the weight of the pieces. So now take some time and maybe clean it up. Don't use too much water because we just took all that time drying it. But you're going to just kind of smooth out the edges again. Just gently. I'm letting the sponge do the work, not the water necessarily. Okay. You can take the back of a brush and clean up those holes a little bit. It'll just smooth them out, make them round. You don't have to recut them this time. That looks good. This piece should be relatively easy to take care of because we put that separator in there. So now, since we didn't go right up to the lip, we can pull that cup right out, okay? And we can use it again if you want to, or you can do whatever you want with it. Okay, so that leaves this piece, and you can see it's not wet, so it's kind of staying, but I can move it. So I can adjust the circle of it just to make sure. If it's not cooperating with you still, you can always use a hairdryer on it just a little bit to move the air around the piece. You're not drying the piece, you're just moving the air so it has more circulation and dries a little quicker. Okay, so we have two pieces. This one we need to get off the form, and this side is still going to be a little wet because we left it upside down. So I'm going to take my needle tool and just pull the edge up. So this is what I did. I took it and I pulled the edge up and pulled it out. And you can see, because the other side is a little drier, that it is staying, the form is staying for me. I still have that little hole in the center. I'm just going to kind of pull it together, take a little extra clay and maybe put it in there. A little ball of clay, shove it in there, and you're good to go. Or you can just leave it. By the time you put the glaze in, it's really not going to show. So the next thing I'm going to do is put these two pieces together. I'm going to put this back upside down, and I'm going to score and slip. Scoring the edge, just scraping it up. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to put it on, and I'm going to look over the top of it. I'm going to make sure it's centered. And I'm just going to make a couple marks, like 4, just so I can see how far it comes out. And I can also use those marks to make sure it's centered. So what I'm going to do right now is score inside that area. Now, if your piece is not drying well for you, if you have a climate that's not cooperating, just leave this wood form in until you have the two pieces together. That works too. We're going to take a little water and put it on our scoring to make that slip. Put them together. And I'm just gently moving it back and forth. You see how it can't move anymore now? So I know they're stuck together there. Now, just for an added extra strength, I'm going to take some of my leftover clay and I'm going to make a coil. It's going to be a pretty thin coil. I'm going to start by rolling my hands together like this and then put it on my workspace using my whole hand and making a coil. I want it to be about that thick. Make sure it's about the same thickness all the way down. Just keep rolling until it is. Now, we're going to take our needle tool and score it right around that edge. I'm going to score my coil also. Add a little bit of water to make my slip. And then I'm going to put them together. So all the way down, scoring it. A little bit of water. I'm just going to wrap it all the way around, making sure that my scoring on my coil is laying so that it touches the scoring on the dish. And when I get where it overlaps, I'm going to take my tool, and I'm trying to do this backwards, cut both of them at the same time, take off the excess, turn it so I can see it, take off the excess of both parts. There's one underneath there, pull that out, and then slip that other end in and then blend them together. You can add a little water to your finger to blend them. And then I'm going to push that coil in to make sure it's nice and tight up against the dish and the base. I'm going to take a look, clean up what I need to clean up. I'm just going to use my fingers to do that. And then I'm going to take it gently, flip it right side up to make sure that everything is even. If it's a little crooked, then we're going to adjust it because our clay is still a little wet. So we're just going to adjust it. See how I'm holding the base on the top? Just adjusting it a little bit until it's nice and straight. Take a peek at it. Turn it around circles. And when it's the way you like it, you let it dry. Now, you can let it dry upside down. Some people like to do this just to make sure the dish stays nice and flat. But you have to do that after you have it all adjusted so that your plate isn't crooked on your base. Okay? We're making sure it's level. Take a look all the way around. And you let it dry. You let it dry until it's bone dry. Once it's dry enough that you feel secure enough to bring it back to the studio if we're firing it, just take your workspace, put your piece on it. Remember to pull up the corners and slip it gently back into your bag and bring it up to us. And that way we can pull it out gently also. We pull up the corners just the way you did. And we'll let it dry for a little while, fire it. It'll be ready for painting then, or you can paint it while it's wet, let it dry and bring it in. Follow the directions on your paint container, how to do that. Now the other thing is you can use air dry clay for this. Air dry clay works just fine because it's not a food piece. If you are going to use it as a candy dish, it needs to be glazed and fired. If you're not, air dry clay, polymer clay, any kind of clay really will work because you're just putting your earrings and your jewelry in there. Well, thanks for watching. And if you like what you saw, like, comment, and subscribe.